So I noticed this trend go around like every 5 years or so, where it seems like people become increasingly thirsty for serial killers like Ted Bundy. And I think a lot of people become very outraged and very angry about this. But in this video, I want to point out, and I want to be very clear, that this is not some kind of new trend that has only emerged because of like TikTok or iPhones or social media. This trend has been well documented since the 1970s and arguably even before that. Back in the 70s, people like Charles Manson, Richard Ramirez, Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, and all kinds of other serial killers were receiving love letters and marriage proposals even in prison. And so in this video, I want to analyze why that is. I want to talk about why some women seem to romanticize and even idolize men who have committed horrible, heinous acts of violence against other women. And I want to get to the bottom of what 3 factors are contributing to this. This is very clearly not a trend that has emerged because of social media. It has existed long before social media, and it will exist far into the future. And today I want to talk about the 3 factors that I think are contributing to this, which I will call the memeing, the framing, and the hybristophilia. So one of the first things that I do want to bring up is this memeing about sexy serial killers. I think we've probably all seen these memes going around, these like viral tweets that circulate where it says something along the lines of, "Ted Bundy is so hot, I would totally let him chop my head off." There's a lot to unpack there, and we do not have time to get into all of it, but maybe just right off the bat, we probably shouldn't be like glorifying, idolizing, or sexualizing a serial killer when the victims' families are still alive today, because this did not happen that long ago. But we're just gonna have to move on because we could spend all day talking about why that's not a good thing to do. But I also do just want to acknowledge that I think most of the time when people are making these posts, it's not coming out of a genuine place of trying to hurt anyone. I think it's just teenagers desperately trying to be as edgy as possible online. I feel like a lot of teens are like, I really want to go viral, and they can't think of anything else to do to go viral than to post something that is absolutely disgusting and will get tons of outrage, because outrage does get engagement. I mean, that's the entire Ben Shapiro model. And one of the other things about social media is there is so much anonymity that you will never actually get in real life. So you can post something that is just completely terrible and get tons of engagement and get tons of attention off of it, and then never actually face any repercussions for the things that you say in real life. So there's no incentive to post things that are just like milquetoast, not controversial tweets. It kind of incentivizes people to be as offensive as physically possible. And I also feel like there's another like not like other girls thing that kind of ties into this, where I think a lot of girls online, a lot of teenagers are like just completely desperate to prove that they aren't like the other girls and that they aren't easily offended. They don't get morally outraged about trivial things like people murdering women, or maybe they have a lot of animosity towards other women, or maybe they're just really into horror movies and psychology, or it could just be as simple as they want to prove that they have the edgiest take of all. And I can think of very few things in this world that try so incredibly hard to be edgy than saying something like one of the most prolific serial killers in our modern era was actually not that bad. And so I think that that's what a lot of this like Ted Bundy is my daddy, ooh, thirst posting stuff that we see online is. I think most of it is just edgy teenagers trying really hard to get attention, and usually it'll go away once they stop trying so hard to one-up society. But also, this trend has not emerged out of nowhere. I want to talk about the framing that our media gives to a lot of modern killers, like, for example, Ted Bundy. Yes, they're portrayed as horrifying, but also kind of sexy. And to prove a point, I googled hottest serial killers, and an article popped up that literally was titled 9 Hot Serial Killers Who We Would Want to Slice Us Open. And this is a direct quote from the article. This is the introduction. It says, "Serial killers fill us with anxiety and fear, but they can also fill you with raw passion and desire. We all love the bad boy type, and these guys are just the baddest of the bad boys. So why do they get such a bad rap? There's nothing hotter than a sexy guy who will make your life flash before your eyes. So if you're hot and have emotional trauma from your childhood that has turned you into a psychopath, call me." Now, setting aside the obvious fact that yes, this is a clickbait article, yes, it is intentionally inflammatory to try to get the most amount of engagement possible, but I also think that it is tapping into something real that we do see in our society, and that is the way that a lot of these killers are framed in real life, and also in movies. The way that movie adaptations of a lot of these stories have framed these serial killers is not as like men who have committed horrifying acts of violence against other people, but as like sexy and misunderstood bad boys. I also think about characters like Joe Goldberg from You or Tate Langdon from American Horror Story. And yes, I understand that these characters are not real people. They did not exist in real life, but it's pretty obvious that they are basing these characters off of things that have happened in real life and off of actual crimes that do happen in the real world. And so I think it's noteworthy that instead of framing their stories around the horrifying acts that they have done or the crimes that they have committed against other people or empowering the victims of these people, it's instead trying to portray them as sympathetic and attractive love interests for the main character. Now, I understand that you also kind of dissected it a little bit more, but I do still think that the representation of Joe was kind of a little bit too sympathetic for comfort. But really quick, I do just want to point out the fact that I've looked at pictures of these so-called hottest serial killers and I just see average looking people. Like, I'm not saying they're unattractive, I'm just saying that they are completely unremarkable in every single way, except for the fact that they don't seem to value human life. And I also just feel a little bit uncomfortable with the fact that so many people are bringing forward this one particular part of their identity. Maybe, just maybe, we should not be constantly framing these men whose defining mark on the world is the fact that they have murdered dozens of women as these attractive, charming young men who were just a little bit misunderstood or who were victims of a system. So now we get into the darker side, and that is the hybristophilia. Hybristophilia is a type of paraphilia where people have attraction towards others who have committed crimes. It's also known as Bonnie and Clyde syndrome. And I feel like this is a very sensitive subject for a lot of women because I know a lot of women are living with a lot of trauma and baggage and dysfunction within their own relationships, and they have kind of these like messed up ideas about what it is to be in love. Like, think about how many times you've heard like a 70-year-old woman tell you a story about like their first love, and it'll be a story like, yeah, I would walk home from work every day and he would follow me. He would bring me a bouquet of roses and have them delivered to my house. And every time I told him to piss off and leave me alone, he would never stop. And so eventually I gave in and gave him a date and we wound up getting married. And I'm like, Edith, no, he's stalking you. Call the police. But I think a lot of women who have stories like this are sort of unwilling to listen to other women's stories when they do come forward and talk about how that was terrifying or abusive. And they kind of dismiss claims like that. I think for a lot of women, acknowledging that this behavior is toxic and abusive and dangerous would mean acknowledging that they were in actual, very real danger if that person had not been someone who was going to respect them. I think for a lot of women, recognizing that stalking is extremely predatory and dangerous would mean acknowledging that these behaviors that they think are romantic are the kind of behaviors that actually lead to many women in the world getting killed. So I think there's this really weird dichotomy between the traits that we see as attractive in men also being present in serial killers. And I think that kind of leads to this behavior getting romanticized. Obviously, I'm not saying that most people romanticize killers or anything like that. I just think that a lot of these traits, like the stalking, the persistence, the dominance, the obsession, a lot of these things that we see in people like, murderers, we also see as romantic tropes in movies and media. And so I think that's something that can kind of skew someone's perception and distort it so that they think that these traits that we see in all these killers that they're romanticizing are normal behavioral traits that you would want in a partner. It is also well known that many serial killers are expert manipulators, which is how they are able to coerce their victims into coming with them, and that's how they are able to commit the crimes that they do commit. And so a lot of these serial killers are able to coerce other women into believing that they are innocent or that they are capable of changing or that they did nothing wrong, or they are otherwise able to separate the killer from their acts. And I think that that is something that does need to be acknowledged. I think a lot of people have empathy for the victims because they were manipulated, but a lot of people are very skeptical or kind of judgmental towards other women who were also manipulated by them. And I think it's important to note that anyone who's manipulated by these killers are victims in their own way. Even if these people are behind bars and even if they aren't able to actually hurt anyone, the fact that they are still under this person's control will give them trauma later on when they eventually snap out of it. And that is something that we have actually seen with, for example, Ted Bundy's ex-wife. So again, I do just want to point out the fact that this is not a new phenomenon. This is not just a trend that has emerged because of TikTok or Tumblr or any other social media site. This has existed since the 70s. It has existed after the 70s. It will probably exist forever. As long as we have any kind of media that is feeding us information about true crime and serial killers and glorifying and romanticizing them, I think this is going to be a thing that we are going to continue to see. I don't think this video is going to stop it, and I don't think it's really possible to stop it at all. I just wanted to discuss it, and I wanted to analyze this trend and share what my thoughts are. And I also wanted to know what you guys think about this subject. Had you ever heard of this before? Have you ever seen this stuff online? And do you have any different opinions, or do you have anything that I didn't bring up in this video that you do think is noteworthy? If you do, definitely let me know in the comments below. Also, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I really, really appreciate it. If you enjoyed what I had to say or found it to be informative, then definitely give this video a thumbs up, and also subscribe to my channel so you get notified every single time I post a video. Thank you guys so much for watching this. Thank you to all of my subscribers, and thank you especially to every single person who is supporting me over on my Patreon. I really appreciate you guys, and I hope you have a wonderful week, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye everyone.